Welcome to the Every Mom is an Athlete podcast, where we believe that motherhood is inherently athletic. I see you lifting car seats, chasing toddlers, and carrying groceries one-handed while holding a baby and a coffee. Your daily life is a workout. I'm Dr. Karlie, pregnancy and postpartum expert, sports chiropractor, strength coach, entrepreneur, and mom of three. Here you'll find solo episodes and real conversations with other moms and leading experts, so you can live your strongest, healthiest, most aligned life in motherhood. No matter how long it's been since you've had your baby, whether you're reconnecting with your body, rebuilding your strength, or just figuring out what feels good again, you're in the right place. Hello there, and welcome back to the Every Mom is an Athlete podcast. I am so excited to chat with you today about the C-section that I had with my second son. And before we get started talking about that, I just want to make sure you know, if you are a C-section mama, I do have an entire C-section postpartum plan for you. So after I had my second son, I made all these modifications because I realized how different and how important it was that C-section moms had their own plan. Generally, you're starting it a little bit later, usually around 2 weeks at the earliest, because it is a major surgery, right? Whereas with my other postpartum plan, you can start as early as the first week if things are uncomplicated with your birth. And I also added in some things that are really specific to C-section moms, like scar massage, when to start that, all kinds of stuff. So if you're a C-section mama, go ahead and check that out. So let's get started. I get a lot of questions about C-sections, and I know it's because the C-section rate in the US is pretty high. About 1 in 3 births is a C-section. So that's a pretty high statistic, and it changes depending on where you are in the country. But it means we definitely want to talk about it. And I want you to be as prepared as you can if you're going into birth, knowing you're going to have a C-section. So I want to start off by saying that I went in knowing I was going to have a C-section, which is very different than an emergency C-section where it wasn't the plan. We found out at about 37 weeks that my second son was breech, which means his head was not down where it was supposed to be. It was up right under my ribs and his bum was down. So that's breech. I kind of had a feeling that he was breech just because right under my ribs, I was like, man, this is just so hard. Like, it feels like a head. It doesn't feel like a little soft, squishy infant bum. And so I actually went to a girlfriend who's a midwife and I was like, can you just tell me what you think? And she's like, I think she wanted it to be his bum for me because she knew how badly I did not want to have a C-section. She's like, I really think it's his bum. I think it's his bum. And then, a few days later, we found out it was not his bum. And she was like, I'm never wrong. And well, whatever. It's fine. It is what it is. So I found out that he was breech. And so, of course, being the crazy chiropractor I am, I did everything that I could possibly do to try to get this baby to flip. Okay. I'm talking everything from all the woo-woo stuff. There's like all this stuff you can find on the internet that just sounds sort of crazy, but I tried it. Okay. So one of the things was you sit in a warm bath, but then you put like an ice pack on top of your belly. And so the thought is like, it's warm on the bottom, so you're encouraging the baby to flip, and you're putting like this uncomfortable ice near their head. Okay, that didn't work. Another thing is playing music to try to get them to flip, like music down near your vagina so that they'll turn down to the nice music. That didn't work. I tried moxibustion, which is I got it from my acupuncturist, which is basically, it looks like a little cigar and you light it and then you just keep it near your pinky toe. You put it down near your pinky toe and you touch it slightly. I'm probably doing the worst job describing this. Acupuncturists out there are probably appalled, but anyways, it's one of the acupuncture points. And so the idea is that can also help the baby to flip. That didn't work. Also, I did everything medical that I could do. As far as chiropractic goes, it's pretty well known in the sort of pregnancy world of chiropractic, and even OBs and midwives will recommend to chiropractors who are Webster certified, which I am, for pregnancy. And it's just a little more gentle technique, and it really focuses on getting the pelvis aligned so that the baby has optimal room to get flipped over into a good birthing position. So of course, I've been having this treatment done my whole pregnancy, but apparently this guy, he is still stubborn. So he was just so stubborn. He did not want to flip. I did spinning babies. That's another one that I recommend to moms. They have just really great positional things. You can imagine, right? If one of your hips is super tight, thinking it's kind of pulled forward, it's going to rotate your pelvis a little bit, right? And maybe it's just not giving your baby the ample room that they need to get in that head down position. So I did all the spinning babies techniques. There's a couple moves. There's like this jiggle that you do. There's a side lying release. And then the forward leaning inversion, which is really, I mean, it feels great. They all felt great, but none of them got my baby to flip. So, and you'll see online, women have great outcomes with these techniques, but I did not. So I still recommend women try all those things, and they work for a lot of my patients, not for me. So after that, I went the very medical route, which is having an ECV or an external cephalic version. And if you're not familiar, this is where the doctors take your abdomen externally, so on the outside, and they try to manually rotate the baby. Okay, so you can imagine how good this feels. Not very good at all. I did it twice. The first time I went in, you really have to try to relax your abdomen. And it is just very difficult because everything in your body is telling you to like push back against these like giant hands that are coming in and trying to like manipulate your body and your baby's. It's just like very unnatural feeling. So it didn't work. So I did a bunch of research and I had looked online and saw that in some parts of the country, they'll do ECVs while you're under a spinal, which basically means they are giving you, it's essentially like the same thing that you have when you have the C-section, which is you're going to be numb from, it's essentially your upper back down. You're numb. And so I asked them about it and they said, yeah, actually, you're a great candidate for this, especially since I'd already had one vaginal birth. They were like, yeah, let's try it. So I go back in, they numb me up. And the cool thing about that, actually, in the long run, I will say, is it is exactly the setup and the prep and everything is exactly like you do when you're going in for your C-section. So in that way, when I went back for my C-section, I felt much more comfortable because I knew, okay, here's how it's going to go. They literally wheel you into the same OR. The lights are the same. It's all very similar. And so I think that did give me a lot of comfort when I actually had my C-section. The other thing is sometimes these ECVs, if they don't go well, like if the baby is not tolerating it, they will tell you that one of the outcomes could be you're going to have your baby that day. Because if they're not performing it well, or if the baby is not tolerating it well, then they might go in and have to actually like do the C-section then. So you always want to be, it's always in those last couple weeks of pregnancy that they'll do this. So anyways, they numb me up. So I'm numb all the way down. I can't really feel my legs. I can't move them really. They try to do this spinning the baby, rotating the baby again, does not work. They can like rotate him. I think they said they could rotate him like 90 degrees. And then as soon as they let him go, that he would just like, boop, pop right back up into his position that he wanted to be in. So there we had it. I tried everything. And at that point I was like, you know what? I truly feel that I have tried everything in my power, all the woo-woo, all the medical. I tried everything. And now I know that this is the way my baby is supposed to be born. And there was some comfort in that, right? Because we don't know the reason. And, I'll probably never know the reason. Could he have had his cord wrapped around his neck? I don't know. Who knows what could have happened, right? But I know that this baby was supposed to be born this way. And I wasn't going to change it with all my will. So I sort of succumbed to that. And that actually, there's a lot of comfort in that too. I actually truly now believe that one of the reasons I was supposed to have that C-section is so that I could talk to my patients and really truly understand how it feels to recover from having a C-section and having surgery. I've, knock on wood, have not had any other major surgeries. So I truly believe that's one of the reasons I was supposed to have the baby that way. And looking back, I'm happy that I did because now I just know so much more. I was able to redesign my whole postpartum plan to make a C-section version, which I think is just so important and valuable for those mamas. Anyways, so that's where we were. There I was. I had planned to give birth with a midwife, a girlfriend of mine, and now I had to switch to an OB, which I was not happy about. But I had a great experience with this OB, and she actually did a great job of explaining to me why in the US, OBs do not do breech vaginal births anymore. So apparently, in many other countries, they still do breech vaginal births. But what happened is, and again, this is what she told me many years ago when they were doing kind of all this research on breech vaginal births, right? So that's where the baby comes out bum first. They found out that yes, it is more dangerous. But looking back, the numbers were sort of extrapolated inappropriately. And so it looked more dangerous than it was. Like the percentage was actually so small that we should have not probably made that decision, which is why other countries didn't make that decision. But what happened was the medical schools here stopped teaching it. So my OB told me that she had one day of teaching about vaginal breech birth because it's just not performed here anymore. So she was like, you know what? You truly don't want me doing a vaginal breech birth for you because I don't know how to do it. Now, there are still some doctors that will do it. I'm in Seattle, and there actually is one about 45 minutes away in Tacoma, apparently, that will do it. And I did think about going that route, but I was like, you know what? Let's just succumb to the will of this baby and what God wants to happen here and not get crazy. So I thought she did such a great job of explaining that to me. But like I said, in other countries, in fact, I have a girlfriend in Canada who was like, just drive on up here. They'll deliver them all the time. She said that midwives there will not do it, but that the OBs will. So again, I did not poll all the OBs in Canada. So I hope that's correct. That's what she told me. What I learned about knowing that I was going to have this C-section was that there's such a thing called a gentle C-section. Sometimes they call it more of a family-centered C-section or cesarean. And what that means, it's just as close to the actual sort of more natural vaginal birth that you can get, right, in a medical setting, because it's going to be more medicalized than you want it to be. And that's just sort of how it is. But there's a lot of things that you can do that make it feel a little more natural. And I'm actually going to put a link below that has the checklist that I used for my births. And that includes the C-section. So I'm going to go over a couple of those things now. And if you know that you're going to have a scheduled C-section, grab this link because it'll just give you some things to think about. And then you can toy around with, if these are things that you want or not. So the first thing you want to remember is this is for a planned C-section. Now, with my third birth, I was planning to go in and have an unmedicated birth, but there's always a chance, right? There's always a chance for a C-section. So I actually do recommend moms, and I did this. I recommend that you put in your birth plan, your little plan you're going to bring in. It's your wishes, right? We don't necessarily know how the birth is going to go, but you can put in there actually, I'm going to read you the exact wording. It says, if the need for a C-section arises, we thank you in advance for accepting and understanding our desire to have as gentle a process as is possible during surgery. And so this is just sort of bringing to light, yes, we know if it's an emergency, maybe all these things are not going to be possible, but if they are, can we make some of these things happen? So in my case, we knew it was going to happen. So here were some things that I requested. And a lot of places will go over this list with you in advance, and then they'll tell you if they can do it or not, right? And everywhere is different. Some places are going to say yes to one thing, where other places they're going to be like, absolutely not. But here's what I requested, and then I can tell you what they let me do. So if at all possible, I requested for the C-section that I be allowed to play music in the OR, which I was. I was not sure how they were going to do that, but they actually just let me bring in my phone. They put it right by my head, and I did have a birthing playlist that I played while they were doing the surgery. I requested that the anesthesiologist doesn't administer any other drugs without my consent. I will say, looking back, here is a tip. If you are super sensitive to pain medication, I would recommend asking them or talking to the anesthesiologist about having some Benadryl or some kind of antihistamine, because I am super sensitive and I wanted to rip my skin off after my C-section because they'd given me some pain meds and I felt like a crackhead. I was seriously scratching and itching. And as soon as I got that Benadryl and it kicked in, it was way better. But looking back, if I would have known that, I would have asked for that in advance. But it was honestly just something I didn't even know to ask for. In my third birth, I actually did put, please make sure that any antihistamine such as Benadryl is delivered with any pain meds. So if you know that, you can also put that in your birth plan. I requested a see-through drape to be used so that I could watch the baby come out. They actually did not have that at the hospital that I was at, but it was pretty cool because I had told them I want to watch as much as I can. And there's these big lights above you that are sort of reflective, it's almost like a mirror. And so I guess what they said is they'll tell people not to look at that, or they can kind of cover it, I think, or something. And they're like, if you watch right there, you can see everything. So I actually did get to see him come out, and that was really cool. I requested that the cord clamping be delayed until the cord was no longer pulsing, which is sort of the standard, I think, as far as when you're reading about the benefits of the reasons why you do delayed cord clamping. You don't necessarily need to be waiting much longer than a few minutes. So that's the goal, is just wait till it stops pulsing and then they're pretty good to go. So I requested that. And then I also requested that all post assessments that could be done at a later time be done later. So basically they take the baby out, they make sure everything's all good, and then they do all the other tests, weight, like all that kind of stuff. They can do that in the room so that they can get the baby to you as quick as possible. And I think it was probably like 90 seconds, maybe 60 to 90 seconds from them taking him out, taking him over, getting him kind of like, doing all his quick little tests and then bringing him back over to me. And that's another thing you can request is that the baby be given to you so you can do skin to skin and you can initiate nursing while you're still on the table. So a couple months ago, actually, I was in a class and there was a couple chiropractors there, but it was mostly labor and delivery nurses and then a couple midwives. It's all about like positioning for women during pregnancy to alleviate pain and stuff like that. But I mentioned to a bunch of these nurses that I had been able to initiate breastfeeding while still on the table during surgery. And they were like, wow, I don't know if I've ever seen that. And so just be sure that you ask your hospital about that because it is something that is very routinely done in a lot of places. And if not, maybe that's something you could like bring to their attention because it does take a little bit of work, right? Because you're not at an angle, so you're still laying flat. So you do need your partner to kind of help you hold the baby in the right place and just make sure that the baby's safe and all that stuff. So it does take a little bit of work, but it is totally doable. And it was great. And I think that was one of my main concerns was that, I'm going to have a C-section. What if my milk doesn't come in? Like, what am I going to do? So initiating breastfeeding right away, I truly believe that was a major player in why I had a good breastfeeding journey with him too. So those are all the things that I requested on my gentle C-section. Some people request that the lights are lowered. I think that one doesn't usually fly because obviously they're doing surgery, so they need to like be able to see. But I really know that the doctors that I was working with really truly were trying to make it as like natural of a process as it could be when it is, it's a medical process. So they're just trying to make it feel as natural and like comfortable as possible. So a few other things about the C-section for me, I went back to the room. You're actually in the hospital for a little bit longer, right? Than if you just had a vaginal birth. And I will say that I overdid it a little bit that next day because I was feeling pretty good. I was on some pain meds and I remember getting up and bending over to pick something up and my husband being like, geez, let me pick it up for you, And I was like, no, I got it. And then the next day, even later that night, maybe I was like so sore and I was like, I overdid it. I know I overdid it a little bit. So I would recommend just being aware that sometimes you're on those pain meds, they are working and just let them work and don't overdo it. Let people help you. You'll see all kinds of stuff online as far as other stuff you can do that helps. Some of the things that I did was like making sure that you have a pillow you can use or something to put sort of over the scar for those first couple weeks. If you cough or sneeze or laugh, there's just a lot of pressure. You can ask at the hospital. They often have like, it's like a Velcro belly band sort of. It's really one of the only times I recommend that women use a belly band because, again, you just had major surgery. So it's giving you something to sort of like help stabilize your abdomen. It can help with a scar, healing, and also just decreasing the inflammation around it. So I do recommend using that as needed after you have a C-section. That can be super helpful. And just ask your hospital about that. Most of them have one they can send you home with. You read all sorts of things about, I can't go upstairs and what am I going to do? I truly did not find that a big issue. I did try to limit stairs as much as possible, but my bedroom is upstairs and our living space is downstairs. So at least a few times a day I'm going up and down. I would just recommend people take the stairs nice and slow and, you're obviously not running up and down the stairs and just limit it, be quick to ask people for help. Like, can you run upstairs and grab this or that for me? Like, you don't need to go do it. That's what your partner is there for. Have them go do it. All right. Well, I hope that helps. I would love to know if you have any other questions about having a C-section, gentle C-section. You can always drop those to me online. The easiest way is on Instagram at Dr. Karlie, DrKarlie. And don't forget, if you are planning a C-section, check out my C-section postpartum plan. It's designed with you in mind to start a little bit later. It starts very gently. It's 8 weeks, and it's going to help you work back into having a strong core in just 20 to 25 minutes a day after having a major abdominal surgery. Until next time, mamas.
Thanks for listening. Every Mom is an Athlete isn't just a podcast. It's a reminder.
Motherhood is athletic, and you're still the athlete you've always been. But it's not about going back. It's about moving forward intentionally and powerfully. If this episode resonated with you, I'd so appreciate it if you'd share it with a friend, leave a quick review, or rate the show. It helps more moms to hear what they need to believe, that every mom is an athlete. See you next time.